When The Last of Us Part 2 was released in June of 2020, a few months into the pandemic, the world was in a different place. We were playing in a post-pandemic world as we were living through one ourselves. It seemed strange at the time, but also something special happened. Something that changed the landscape of a community that had never been seen before. A AAA game that is not only a masterpiece to the gaming public, but also an accessible masterpiece. That game changed an industry. It was the stone hitting the water that we are still feeling the ripple effects of today. 2 years later, Naughty Dog is set to release the beginning of that story, the one that started it all the way back in 2013, but rebuilt for players who had never been able to play it before. Does The Last of Us Part 1 Remake live up to its sequel as the most accessible game ever? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Steve Saylor, an accessibility advocate and consultant in the video game industry, and I'm also blind. If you're wondering how I can play video games if I'm blind, check a look at the video here or click the link in the description down below to see exactly what I see when I'm playing video games. While you're down there, click the like and subscribe button to help keep this channel growing. I try to release videos every week, and every little click counts. Before I begin, I should fully disclose that much like The Last of Us Part 2, I did consult on The Last of Us Part 1 Remake. However, same as when I reviewed Part 2 originally, I was paid to consult and I was not paid for this review. My opinion is my opinion alone, and Naughty Dog or Sony has not seen this review before it goes up. The Last of Us Part 1 Remake is completely rebuilt for the PlayStation 5, and it honestly really does show. I think rebuilt is a very apt term for what they did, because not only has the characters and environments have had a lot added to improve the original visuals of the game, but it's the engine that runs the game that adds a lot more. They were able to add more to the environments and areas you go into that wasn't there before. The facial animations were actually taken from the original motion capture source material, and they enhanced them so you can see every subtle facial muscle, wrinkle, eye movement that is even closer to the actor's performance than there was before. The AI is also smarter for both allies and enemies, and Naughty Dog promises that you may not experience the same combat scenario in the exact same way each time, and while I think that's for the most part true, you'll still feel like you are in familiar situations if you played this before. But the biggest change to the game is the accessibility. They added the same 60+ accessibility options that Part 2 had, with a few notable additions, which I'll get to in a moment. The game has the same presets, the same subtitles, the same high contrast mode, and the same remapping controls along with everything else that Part 2 had. However, there are some tiny caveats to that. While the game does have the same features, it's the gameplay that can cause moments of interesting hiccups when playing Part 1. Not everything works 100% exactly right, and it's hard to really show what I mean. It's not that there are bugs per se, but more of how the game feels. As an example, the same accessibility for combat and stealth that are in Part 2 are there, but where it feels extremely smooth in Part 2, feels a bit bumpy in Part 1. While the AI has improved a lot, for some reason the combat can feel a tiny bit sluggish, and some of the accessibility can get in the way. This is not to say that the game is bad or in any way worse than Part 2. At its worst, quote unquote, Part 1 is still one of the most accessible games ever made. Any criticism that I have is just nitpicking that can hopefully be smoothed out either after launch or in a future update. But I do have a theory as to why Part 1 doesn't feel the exact same as Part 2 when it comes to accessibility. It's because the core game wasn't designed with accessibility in mind. It was designed around a time when accessibility wasn't even thought of in game development. Naughty Dog didn't even start thinking about accessibility until partway through working on Uncharted 4 a few years later after working on Part 1. So when it came time for Naughty Dog to work on Part 2, a lot of key core decisions were made with accessibility early on because of what they learned from working on Uncharted 4. By doing so, Part 2 feels tight and smooth throughout the whole game for disabled players. But when they tried to add all of that into Part 1, the features work as intended and are better than other games that came out over the past 2 years. It just makes the holes that were in the original design stand out more. They were trying to take 2013 game design and make it work in 2022. That's hard to do even with all the development time and resources in the world.
Oh, also as a side note, and I felt this way with Part 2 as well, With just the sheer amount of options in both Part 1 and 2, it can be hard to find or determine which option will work best for you, especially when you come up against a frustrating part of the game and you need to find that one option to enable or so your disability wouldn't get in the way. I would encourage players to explore the accessibility menus to try out other features that might help, even if it wasn't classified or categorized with your disability in mind.
But with that said, there is still much to be praised for what Naughty Dog was able to achieve beyond just adding the same accessibility from Part 2 into Part 1 and call it a day. They wanted to do more, so they added some new features that have never been seen before in a game that made me wish that all games had these. First off, let's talk about cinematic descriptions. One of the key pieces of feedback blind and low vision players had said would have made Part 2 even better was audio descriptions of the gameplay and cinematics that would audibly describe what is happening in the story. This was the key missing information that would have immersed a blind player into the game more and understand what was going on. In Part 1 Remake, Naughty Dog partnered with Descriptive Video Works, which provides audio descriptions for TV shows and movies. They've actually worked with Ubisoft in the past to do audio descriptions for some of their trailers, but this is the first time that Descriptive Video Works have ever done audio descriptions for a full game. And wow, are they good. It's on par with the quality of audio descriptions you would hear in original shows and movies on Netflix, Apple TV, and Disney+.
He closes the door behind them, then strides over to a couch. He wipes it, then adjusts a pillow before lying down. Ellie stares at him.
What are you doing?
Killing time.
His eyes are closed.
Well, what am I supposed to do?
I am sure you will figure that out.
As she surveys the apartment, her eyes wander to Joel. She steps past the couch. He wears the wristwatch Sarah gifted him, which now has a cracked face.
Your watch is broken.
Now, while the main cinematics are audio described, there are some in-game cinematics that aren't. It's hard to tell actually the distinction at times between what is a proper cinematic and one that isn't, and the only way to truly tell the difference is if it has audio description or not. So while it's great to hear that in the game, it isn't fully integrated as you'd hoped, and blind players will have missing gaps where the game isn't providing the full story experience from beginning to end. Still, I'd love to see more developers add this into their games because blind players desperately need this. It's one of the things, along with screen readers, is the key pieces of information that would help totally sightless players being able to enjoy games today. Next up is actually a new feature designed for deaf and hard of hearing players, and that's using the haptics in the DualSense controller for spoken dialogue. You can literally feel the vibrations of the characters' voices as they speak through the controller. What this does is combined with subtitles, you can tell how fast or how slow a character is speaking, whether they pause in between words or lines, and also if a character has a softer voice like with Ellie with its subtle vibrations, or a deeper voice like Joel's with a more pronounced vibration. In a weird way, actually, when talking to Ben Bayless at Can I Play That, we both laughed as the best we could describe it was imagine if we had our hands on the characters' throats and can feel the vibrations of their vocal cords while they spoke. I know, it's weird and creepy, and probably not the best description, but it's the closest we could come up with. But I will say though, trust me, the feature works and it actually is really, really cool. And it really does immerse you into the game for deaf and hard of hearing players than any game has done before. I personally don't mind the haptic dialogue even for myself, and even after many hours of gameplay. Individuals' results may vary though. You can in multiple ways tone down the haptics if you need to. However, you may sacrifice the more subtle vibrations and you may not feel them if you lower the intensity of the haptics. Another key piece of feedback Naughty Dog received was also from those with motor disabilities, where some players could not play the game because they could not hold a DualShock or DualSense controller, and thus couldn't play Last of Us Part 2. Well, good thing is that Naughty Dog is actually currently working on a PC edition of Part 1 that, as of this recording, does not have a release date yet, but is still currently in development. But if Sony's previous PC editions of its top games are any indication, they will add mouse and keyboard remapping, and that will be the missing piece those players have been looking for. So in conclusion, let's face it, The Last of Us Part 1 is a masterpiece. It bridged the gap between film and TV storytelling and video games. It showed the potential of what games can do. It gave a cinematic experience while putting you in control of its characters. It was the game of a generation. And now the remake brings that masterpiece to a new generation of consoles and players. It bridges the gap between disabled players not being able to play the game and who now can. It can give a cinematic experience while putting any player with any ability in control of its characters. For accessibility, it's a game of a generation, only surpassed by its sequel. I give The Last of Us Part 1 Remake a 4 out of 5. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section down below. If you like this video, give it a like. And also if you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be notified when new videos come out, I really appreciate it. Again, it'll help this channel grow. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. And as always, I remain obediently yours. Bye.